There we go. We are live. Hey, folks, this is Eric Mishi, Executive Director of SAVE, Suicide Awareness Voices of Education. I am thrilled today to be here with Clark Flatt, who is the president of the Jason Foundation. The Jason Foundation is, and I'm going to let Clark give a little history of his role and what the Jason Foundation is all about. But SAVE has the privilege of working with the Jason Foundation and a number of other organizations as a member of a group called the National Council on Suicide for Suicide Prevention. And I'm thrilled to be here with you today. Clark, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. As we discussed before we got on, hot, but besides that, where I'm at, we're doing okay.
That's good. Well, that's not a Minnesota accent. So for those folks that are Midwesterners, tell us about the Jason Foundation, how it started, and a little bit about the work that it does.
Great. All right. First of all, my accent is from Tennessee, so I usually do good everywhere except in the far Northeast, and then I have to take an interpreter. I talk way too slow and slanted. So, but no, Eric, it's just an honor to be on it and to be able to share and the work with the National Council on Suicide Prevention and SAVE and what we all try to do is truly an act of collaboration, showing that this is too big of a problem for any one organization. We have to work together along with public and private organizations to do this. Very quickly, the history of the Jason Foundation. I wish I could say, like probably a lot of people watching this or that works with both of our organizations, they started out early on saying, I want to work with kids. I want to work with young people, communities. I want to work on mental health. And that's what they're doing now. And I didn't start out that way. Well, I did. I came out of Vanderbilt with a master's degree in MDiv in counseling and education. Went into counseling for 1 year. Mostly it was with the United Methodist Church. It was marriage counseling, mostly. That is something I decided very early on. I wasn't cut out for, and I always had a business sort of set of mind. And I had an encouragement and opportunity, a small insurance company. As people will notice by the time we're over, I'm not the sharpest tack in the box, they say, but I get to put good people around me. And that's what I did with that company. Became very successful, upper middle income. Life was good, Eric. I had the house overlooking the lake. I had the boat on the lake. I had sports cars. I had wave runners. Had a great family, wife, 2 boys. Had a wonderful dog, a cat that was suspect, and that was till July the 16th, 1997. July the 16th, 1997. To make a long story short, after receiving a phone call from one of Jason's friends, simply had I heard from him that day. I started looking for him because I thought that was kind of odd. It was his day off from his summer job. I ended up going home because I told him to cut the yard. And when I arrived at home, I found that he had written 2 notes, stood in front of his bed, taken my .38 caliber pistol that I had locked up until he was 16, and placed it beside his ear and made a decision that he couldn't take it back. And he lost his life to suicide. I came in and found him that day. That's something that's probably the toughest part of my job today because of I get some almost every week, 1 or 2 families I get to talk to that just lost someone. And that's whoever found the person. That is terrible, especially if it's a sibling. But anyway, I wish I could have said I got up and started the Jason Foundation at that moment. But if it hadn't been for friends encouraging me to find out what happened to Jason, I'm not sure we would be where we are today. I do remember going back to my insurance office and I sat down and I typed in "use suicide" on a really advanced computer, Radio Shack.
Yeah, okay.
And it came up from the CDC at that time, "use suicide, 3rd leading cause of death." That was ages 15 to 24. When I saw that, that's when we started the Jason Foundation and really started it hopefully to cover Tennessee one day, to provide programs then initially just for parents. Not to scare them, but to raise that awareness about how this impacted so many families across our nation, how we could help people learn to recognize those signs of concern or warning signs, as some people say, and then what they could do, what resources. And this was in 1997, July the 16th, 1997. The resources, as you know, you've been around working with us, working in this field a long time. They wasn't very plentiful then, so it was a tough job. We were very fortunate good Lord put the right people in front of us. We grew from really operating for a year and a half, 2 years on a kitchen table that we still have in our corporate office. To today, we have 218 affiliate offices located in 39 states. So we've been blessed, and we don't ever charge for any program. Just, we never charge for anything that we agreed to provide, whether it's an individual, school, community, or even a state, as we talked previously. But that's how we got to where we are here today. We started out with some people encouraging us to help other parents, and now we have programs for the parents. We have programs for students. As we'll talk later, I'm sure the teachers is our number one program across the country.
Yeah. It's interesting. First of all, thank you for sharing that. And obviously, thank you for that journey and your work. And, it's an organization like yours, similar to, SAVE was started 35 years ago by family and friends who had lost somebody near and dear to them to suicide. And so, so often in this country, nonprofit organizations are started by folks who have had some kind of personal impact or experience, right? And they want to try to make a difference. They want to try to, make sense of that tragedy or that circumstance. And so, in the years that you've been doing this, Clark, 39 states, all of the programming that you're doing, talk a little bit about, from your perspective, what's gotten better, what's gotten worse, and where do you think the challenges and the opportunities are for the future?
Well, what's got better is even back in 1997, 98, 99, I was in groups where people with clinicians and people, I even had some professionals that would refer to suicide as the S word. What's gotten better, especially over the last 10 years, 5-10 years, the ability to have a conversation about suicide openly, not just with clinicians, but with school administration, with representatives, with community leaders, pastors, churches. It seems that no longer is that the word that we don't want to say. That's not the thing that we want to face up to. So if I had to say anything, the ability to discuss or to talk about the issue, we really believe, as I know SAVE does a tremendous amount of that too. I've often asked, what's the number one thing I want us to accomplish? I said, if we can help open up the conversation and raise the awareness about the impact of suicide, whether we do anything to help with the tools, resources, and other things, if we can do that, we've been successful. Because if you're not talking about an issue, you're certainly not going to learn about how to address it. So, that being able to talk about it more and have more people want to have what we call engage in a positive conversation on suicide awareness and prevention is probably the good thing. The tough thing is now that some of the things that are coming in and entering into the situation, like the pandemic, everybody likes to blame everything on the pandemic, but as you have seen also, I'm sure, it has had some impact that in my 27 years in dealing with it, I've never seen that much of an impact, especially on our young people, our students, and our young adults up to 34. And we're not out of the woods yet. I know the CDC put out one to say, hey, we've got some good things to say, but boy, we're not out of the woods by anything. So I think the pandemic, what we're seeing now, and we've started a whole division called the Phoenix Division around drug user abuse and mental health issues related to suicide. I really believe, like out of that 107,000 that we lost in overdoses, that it's not just somebody got a hold of fentanyl. As bad as that is, terrible. They just didn't make a mistake in too much. I believe that the thing that's coming more and more like passive suicidal ideation, I think, was involved in those. And we have to start addressing those. Schools are now even saying, well, that's just the phase the adolescent's going through. Not saying I have a plan, but the passive suicidal ideation. So addressing some of these things, like looking at the drug areas that most of us mental health people, at least we have, stayed out of. Now we've got to get into that. And the pandemic, how to deal with that. I had a governor, I won't name the state, but he asked me, what can we do? And this is in the last 6 months. What can we do to address this? I said, you've waited to this point. You're going to play catch up. You're not going to get ahead of it. And so I think that's probably the negative parts is some of these outside influences that is starting to raise the numbers despite the good programs. And I'm asked a lot of times, you have these good resources, not just us, but our field, better resources than ever, better programs than ever, reaching more people, but the rates keep seemingly climbing up. Is that, it's not because the programs are not effective. I think it's now we're getting better reporting, we're getting better awareness. And the problem is I'm afraid outstretching us a little, at least Jason, they're outstretching what we can catch up to.
Yeah. Well, and I think, there was the National Institutes of Health released a study that talks about the increase of teen suicide,
right?
Particularly among girls and youth of color. And while they say, they state that obviously the numbers right now within the context of the entire population are still, quote, relatively low. It's the percentage increases that are particularly disturbing. And what are those external factors that are leading to that, right? We talk a lot about the issue of loneliness and hopelessness and helplessness and things like that, but and as having worked in the field for 27 years, if there was a single reason, right, or a single solution, you and I wouldn't be doing it, right? And so I just read that report again this morning, and we've done a lot of work over the past year on issues related to social media and the impact of social media platforms on kids and youth mental health and things like that. When you and I were kids, those external factors weren't at play.
No.
And now you've got all of those plus everything else going on in society, which creates some incredible challenges.
The report you talked about, that's scary to me as you've brought it up. I can remember when 10 to 14-year-old wasn't even a statistical significant number to report by the CDC. Wasn't even out there. And now it's the second lead. How many parents don't realize that the second leading cause of death in the United States for 10 to 14-year-olds is suicide? Yeah, that and not knowing that is probably one of the most dangerous things. Really concerned me now that we're seeing that 8 to 10-year-old group percentage-wise. And it's starting because what goes on there is going to increase, in my opinion, it's going to increase those numbers in our preteens, our teens, and our young adults. And with that number even catching the CDC's, the National Institute of Mental Health, catching their attention, says to us that that's something. I know we are coming out with an elementary school program because of the demand that's been put on us for several younger teachers are saying we need this. But to come up with something like that where you're not really addressing suicide, but you're addressing those mental health issues that if are well done and well enhanced in a person can help prevent those suicidal ideations. So we're interested in that. But that younger age group really scares me in our field, what we're looking at.
Well, so let's talk a little bit about, in Minnesota, the school year here starts right after Labor Day. I don't know, when does school start, generally speaking, in Tennessee?
It's going on now. It's starting up.
So you're starting up. We'll be starting here in really less than a month. In terms of the work that you do, in when you talk with elementary schools and you talk to middle schools, a lot of the conversation I often hear and see really is about kind of the overall umbrella of mental health.
Right.
And because once you start drilling down to the actual subject matter of suicide, while people still, while there's less likelihood that we're going to talk about it in the context of the S word, talking about it in an elementary and a middle school environment, even a high school environment, can still be scary for a lot of schools and school administrators. So how do you as your organization, how do you broach that conversation with school, either as they reach out to you or as others ask you to reach out to schools?
Well, there's two ways we do that. And the first one you just mentioned, which is the worst way of doing it. Usually when a school has a problem, and I don't mean just a single suicide, but they've had regrettably a couple of three over a 2-year period. And they're getting heat from parents in the community. Then they start looking for resources, and at least they're looking for it, but it's terrible. There's been this loss that was possibly unnecessary before they get going. So then when you go and talk to them, they're more open about what we can do and how we can do it. What we have an issue with it is just saying, let's don't work with the school. If you just come in with the school, you're not going to address this. You've got to get the churches, you've got to get the community involved, you've got to get the Kiwanis. So if you're going to have a good prevention program, you've got to touch a lot of stops. But if they come to us, it does at least open that door, and we sit down and talk to them about how you can be a conduit for the rest of the community. In fact, that's the worst part about not the worst part, but the part about the pandemic hitting our organization is we use schools as a hub to branch out to the rest of the community. And when they were shut down, our point of entry into communities had to change drastically. I like the other way better, though, Eric, is when we have a plan and we come to a school or a school system and we say, and we want to talk, and we'll try to find some key people in there. What we found is the reason they shy off about a prevention programs or curriculums and things is if you don't know something, if you don't know about something, you're fearful of it. Yeah. You know, if I don't know about airplanes, I'm more fearful about getting on one than if I know about it, you know. Yeah. Fear comes from that. We found that if we can not push, but educate, bring those people up to an awareness about how this impact of suicide is affecting their students, their families, the communities, but we can do something to help prevent this. Not all of them, but we can do something. If nothing else, we make lives better. As you know, that's the first thing. We make lives better, and we can save lives too. That takes a longer time, but usually I think it comes out better when we have built that communication with them, and they then come to the conclusion, we need to do something. And a lot of times they'll be asking for us things we don't have. That's where the National Council with people like SAVE come in. We know those other major players out there, and we say, okay, we don't do it, but we know somebody does that well. And that's the key of being able to do that. So we've had it, and then with success with the Jason Flatt Act, that has opened school doors, because since 2008, now we have a reputation of being that organization in several, just like SAVE, that you can trust. You don't have to be afraid about letting them in and what they're going to be presenting. These are solid people. And
so that's a great lead-in to talk about the Jason Flatt Act. So let's talk about what it is and kind of how it works. And you and I talked a little bit offline about it, but share a little bit more about what that is.
Well, my personal opinion is if the number one thing a state, and we're looking at that, or even a school district, a town, number one thing they can do to help confront youth and young adult suicide is to train their teachers. Now, it's not the only thing. You can't just do that one thing and say, well, we've done it. That's the number one impactful thing that they can do that will make it lasting. And I don't mean train the teachers to be counselors. We are very, very, and almost say it too often, this is not making you a crisis counselor. Don't think you are. You know, what this is doing is enabling you to understand suicide, understand those signs of concern, the warning signs, things to look for, even not only what to look for, how to respond if a student comes to you. Know about your school's protocol. Your school doesn't have a protocol. Hey, we know people you can go to help build that, but to have that set up. We started that in 2007 in Tennessee. Actually, the idea came from a very young legislator that was in New Jersey, walked up to me after one of my presentations, said, I don't have money. I'm not very influential. I just got elected. What can I do? And you've been there, I'm sure. I didn't have anything for him to do, and so I said, why don't you think about it and get back with me? He came up with the idea. Let's come up with a training that we can do with the teachers. Now, we didn't go back to his state. I regret that. We came back and put that together in Tennessee. And when we passed it, it was probably the most comprehensive training legislative thing in the United States that we knew of. It didn't say, here's the training, we asked you to do it. It required every teacher in the state of Tennessee to have 2 hours of training each and every year in order to keep their teacher's license. It was a required CEU. Now, it doesn't require, the Jason Flatt Act does not require you to take the Jason Foundation's training materials, even though we'll talk about that in a minute. We have great training, but there's other people got great training. Mm-hmm. We really try to push people to use your NAMIs, your mental health associations, their SAVEs, the other organizations that are local to their school that would have a good professional training program that they could bring. All it says is it has to be approved by the Department of Education, these training things. We did it in Tennessee and had a great response, the overwhelming response. And we have, be glad to send you a copy. We do a survey every year of over 1,000 teachers who took it in the previous year, making sure the efficacy, are we doing what we think? Is it really? And it's amazing what these teachers are saying. I hate in-service programs. They're usually bored, but this is useful. And when you start hearing things like that, it really, so we took the Jason Flatt Act that first went in Tennessee and we passed it in 21 states. Now, 2 states had things that automatically let them drop off after a while. And then when legislators signed, but at least the initial passing was in 21 states. And most of them are still very, very operative on that. But we hate to make it something that's required, but it's the only way to get those in, because teachers are required to take so many other types of things. But I truly believe, Eric, that we're doing the teachers a misservice. We're doing the schools a misservice. We're certainly doing the students and their families if we don't prepare our teachers who spend so much time with our young people the ability to better recognize and know how to appropriately respond to a student who might be struggling with thoughts of suicide. So we train almost 200,000 teachers a year now. So
that's incredible. That's incredible. And so as you looked at doing it, and how many states is this in right now, did you say?
21, and we've had 7, I believe, other states pass it just like we have it, but didn't call it the Jason Flatt Act. That's okay. They're getting the job done, Yeah. But now we don't make the guarantee if it's a state without the Jason Flatt Act. We don't do the fiscal guarantee with that. Yeah.
So you and I chatted a little bit about kind of one of the things that people get concerned about is mandates without funding and things like that. So generally speaking, what would be somebody's objection for wanting to require this?
God, you don't know how many conversations we've had with people that, and I won't name it. A couple of states have brought it up, got them all the way to the end and didn't pass it. I'm going, wait a minute, the CDC, everybody, the clinical things out there, training your teachers are so important. You did it, and you're going to get it passed, and you can provide it to every teacher in your state with no fiscal note to the state. And we have a history of 2007 showing that we can do that. And why wouldn't you pass it? I have no idea. If it's passed as we have written it, that says how it can be delivered and stuff, we guarantee a state can do it. Should they choose that way, they can do it without any fiscal note. And we've never had a state come back to us and say, boy, that thing's costing us money now.
Okay.
It's never has been brought up.
Well, as we chatted about, I want to chat with you offline about that issue, and we've got a legislative session coming up next year in January, and this is a conversation. We're part of the state suicide prevention task force and Minnesota Mental Health Legislative Network and things like that, and in the conversations that we have, with teachers and with administrators and parents. Again, there's a lot of conversation around this kind of overall broad discussion of mental health, which we got to have, right? You got to have that conversation, and thankfully we have that more often. But even again, as we just talked about earlier, with the data that we're starting to see with younger and younger kids, this need to really kind of confront the issue of suicide head on.
When you talk to your legislators, stress the 2 things. First of all, it's the right thing to do, as you know. I mean, we train them. They're going to provide some life-saving, life-changing things to some kids. The second one that really gets the administrators who are not so warm and fuzzy in their heart is the legal part. And that's one thing we've seen change over, especially the last 10 years, where lawsuits against schools, teachers, and school districts used to be thrown out because there was no sense of duty, as the legal system would say. That's no more. That's not happening. And we've seen the legislative part, as far as the trial part, is really escalated in the last 10 years. And so a school system should do it because it's the right thing. Second thing, you need to protect yourself, because parents now are looking for who missed it, who could have done something and didn't. And so there's two reasons to do that.
Yeah. So as you look at, again, 27 years on, and you look at, what are some of the hopeful signs that you see as we kind of look into the future? Where do you see their progress being made? There was just a new national strategy for suicide prevention that was released, which is a big document that for the first time, I think this is the third one where now there's like an action plan associated with it. So I know there's a lot of enthusiasm about that document as a kind of a guiding force, but at the end of the day, it's the boots on the ground
that's it.
That right. And so where do you see the hopeful signs of all of this?
Well, really, a national strategy, and I'm proud of it that we were part of the first one, as SAFE was, and all the way up to this last one, though. As you know, my issues, it doesn't do anything bad. It really is when you get them down to it. So this is a paper for how the government can get involved in it.
That's right.
And it didn't involve very much those people that are out there doing the ground. I really think that if we're going to be successful confronting the issue of suicide in our nation, it's going to be from those boots on the ground organizations, the ones that are out in the community, not necessarily national ones. There's some really good regional ones. There's some good small ones. You don't have to be a national one. Just be a solid and good clinical organization. I think that the disconnect that we have seen with that actually concerns me somewhat. That the boots on the ground people were not involved in that. And so I think that the plus thing, though, is things like the National Council. We've had organizations back when we first started in 97. I found very quickly that most nonprofits that might put their arm around you was not really hugging you, they were choking you. I was sort of naive. I thought we were all in this to sing Kumbaya and do good things. I think that it was because people saw a lack of funding. If you got funding, they didn't. But I'm seeing now more of a collaborative state, and that's good. That's going to be something. As proud as I am of our size and everything, we're just a speck in this prevention thing. We're going to have to find a way to get the governmental organizations, state, local, school systems, private organizations like ours, nonprofits, working together. If they can get in harmony with each other, we can make headway. If we can't, it's just going to end up being this give and take, I think, for decades to come.
Yeah. Well, as I said at the beginning, this half hour is going to go really, really fast, and we're kind of coming to the end of that half hour. And you and I share a lot of mutual friends, and folks from all of our time in the world that we've been in, and I'm grateful for the opportunity, Clark, to be able to collaborate and work alongside you in this space. It's a tough subject matter. It's a tough challenge. It's a tough issue, but I think what has impressed me in the time that I've been in this role is the passion and dedication that folks like you and others who've been in this fight continue to have 27 years later. And I'm a big believer in hope. And so I think that's got to be kind of the defining word that drives us to do the work that we do. And so I'm grateful for the work you're doing, the Jason Foundation. I thank you for your time here today.
Appreciate it.
And I want to chat with you some more about the Jason Flatt Act. Let's connect and see what we can do.
Thank you for making this available to us. Thank you for having this time. And thank you for all that saved us. You really, from the time I first met with them, very collaborative, very community-minded. What can we do to help address this? So it'll be that kind of spirit that'll make a difference, I believe.
I agree. Thank you very much, Clark. We will see you on the backside.
All right. Thank you, sir. Have a good one.